All right. Yeah. So welcome everyone to a new section on AEM Headless. In this section, we will show you an overview of the developer tools that we have for developing applications, rendering content from AEM Headless. So my name, Duy Nguyen from Adobe. I worked in the developer experience and JavaScript. My focus is on JavaScript front-end development tools. Together with me is Dragan, Filipovic.
Hi, I'm Dragan Filipovic from Netcentric.
OK, so what is the agenda of our topic today? First of all, we will go through AEM Headless, what makes AEM a headless CMS. And then we'll go through an overview of the toolings for AEM Headless, as well as the use cases, which tool is being used. We'll see the difference between the GraphQL and REST APIs. And then we will also have a glimpse on the SDK library, as well as the CLI. And then in the demo, we will show you a full developer journey, going from scratch to modeling the content, creating content fragments, to consuming the content in the client side, as well as optimizing the content retrieval from AEM Headless. First of all, AEM Headless. So why AEM is a headless CMS? On the content management part, all the content can be created, updated, and retrieved with APIs, either via REST or GraphQL. Second, the rendering and delivery can be fully decoupled from the AEM core. And finally, integrations are made easy with Headless, in the sense that you can customize your developer workflows, as well as create third-party extensibility. This diagram demonstrates visually what I meant by the previous mentioned headless architecture. So you are probably familiar with the headless flow of AEM, in the sense that the content management happens inside of the CMS core. So the author goes to the CMS to author the content using the UI. And then with the HTTP API, particularly GraphQL, you can deliver the content to the client app so that it can render in multiple channels, namely mobiles or SPA, IoT devices, and social media channels. So there's a shift today that we see, is that the content management part can be even outside of the core, which allow you to extend even more by the developers writing extensions, as well as integrations with other systems. So in this case, the HTTP API helps both the input from the outside and the output to the channels that will be responsible for rendering. And of course, the author in this case can also manage the content in the decoupled mode. All right, so as I mentioned before, there are two personas that are involved in this process. The first one is the author, or we call marketing practitioner. And as a marketing person, I want to create content without having to mind about the layout, so that I can reuse the content in multiple channels in order to scale content strategy. And with that, you can use the the UI editor from AEM, as well as the developer persona. So by developer persona, so as a developer, I want to build the app quickly and deliver exceptional experiences using the frameworks, the languages, and the tools that I'm already familiar with. So that all starts with the developer tools, including API, CLI, SDK. A glimpse on the developer API. So you are probably familiar with the GraphQL API, which are used for client-facing application. So B2C, in order to deliver the app to the end user. And then what we also have today is the REST API for the management part, as well as the integration, which focuses on the B2E use case. So that, for example, the author, as previously shown, can manage content according to your need. First of all, let's go through the Headless REST API and tool. And so the main purpose is for admin tasks. For example, if you want to import or export like bulk content from / to another system, or you want to automate your content kind of process, or like in an event-driven way. The second use case that it is also good for is UI extensibility. For example, integrating with another system, as mentioned before. In order to illustrate that, this diagram shows the first use case, which focuses on content import and event-driven. So, for example, you have your so you have an app builder stack where the events are received from a third-party system, whether that is CRM or e-commerce, some product information data from the marketplace, and also forms, for example, which trigger the webhooks, go into the event handler, and then there you have like either a serverless action or some other logics that handle those events and then talk to AEM via the REST API. The other use case is UI extensibility. So we know that AEM has the content fragment UI that allows you to interact with the content. That also uses the REST API. And then you can also write like extensions according to your need, which also leverage the REST API to save and get content from AEM. So those can be, for example, custom content picker, or like you want some kind of custom flow for app management. Events pops up. You want to launch some campaign using emails. And nowadays, you might want to create your content with Gen AI and so on. So again, it is like all we have for the API tools, for the REST API tool. First of all, as I mentioned, it supports RUT operations with CFMs and content fragments. And then with the API tool, we also mean that it has open API with Swagger documentations, as well as the SDK library and the CLI. So we'll see all of that in the demo later. So I'll just quickly go through those. First of all is that we have the open API playground and the docs that as a developer, you want to understand what is inside the API and how to use it. And then here are a few examples using the CLI to, for example, list all the models that you have in AEM, getting the model metadata from AEM, or using the SDK, to automate your backend tasks. I have one example in JavaScript, and another one for TypeScript for the if you are more like Java kind of developer. So now I will hand over to Dragan to talk about the Headless GraphQL API and tools.
Thank you, Duy. So what you just saw earlier is how actually to administrate the content fragments in AEM via CLI. So you can create all the content inside, and the next part is how actually to use that content for the website or for some application. Why we use that mostly, as I mentioned, admin part is for other tools, and our SDK is for client-facing application. It can be web apps, mobile apps, or IoT. Example of how you can actually retrieve GraphQL content from AEM is just like regular query with several types which AEM offers. Here we have a model list, which is one of the types which AEM offers for content fragments, and the result is just a list of items from the content fragments model. Next one is a bit more complex. Beside list, we can use paginated model to retrieve paginated content, and then you can use mostly for load more or for next and previous pages. As you can see here, we already see that the query itself is more complex than previous one, which was just simple retrieval of the list, and the results are again more complex than the previous one, just going through the items. Beside list and paginated query, we also have the third one, which is retrieving the content by path, if you just want to retrieve one specific model. And the persisted query, which is not per se GraphQL, is just a regular GET request if you want to improve performance. In SDK, we are covering all these possible variations because you don't need to worry about how the results will come. Are they going to have nodes for paginated? You don't need to worry about what the cursor is, what is current page. It's all that retrieval of the content and creation of the query is simplified for you. And that's why this SDK can help you. These are just some examples of the simplified usage. You can just build the query, providing the model name and the path and the fields for the item itself. So you don't need to provide all the arguments and build complex query and then go through the results and check if it's paginated, then retrieve node. If it's not, then retrieve list. This SDK can help you just to simplify that process for you. All that, it's going to be easier to understand when we see the demo. And we can start now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dragan. So in the demo today, we also want to leverage the adaptTo sections that you are probably familiar with. It doesn't mean it's a real life use case. We just leverage the model so that it's kind of friendly to you as the audience. So in the demo, we show you like the journey from modeling the content with the content fragment models, as well as creating the content fragments remotely, mainly for in the bulk importing use case. And then we have a React application to render the content. And in the app, you can create the GraphQL API, the GraphQL query to fetch content fragments, as well as using persistent queries in the app. All right, let me switch to my IDE. And so I have like the model here. So because those are the sections model, so we have some definitions. What it have?
You're not sharing.
Oh, sorry. Let me quick. Yeah. Sorry again. So let me start when I move to the IDE. So this is the model definition of what we have. So a section would have a name, which is a normal text, a description field, which is a long text or a text area, a speaker on stage, which is Boolean, schedule time, size, tag audience, and so on and so forth. So we want to create like the first model. And what I will do, I just move to the demo file here. And here I'm just importing the library headless squad as well as the local configuration. And first of all, I initiate the client. Which is a headless lion and configuration. And then I will create the new model. Should be a model. And then I just get the new model from the other file. And then I'll just quickly print out the response. So I make this a bit bigger in order to run. I will use npx ts node, run the demo file. I think it's because it cannot import this, so let me quickly delete the definition. Sorry. Let me save the code. Close this. Let me run again. OK, so you can see that the first model is created using the SDK. Let's also have a few other sections for, like a few other sections model for this year and next year. So instead of creating model, I would just create multiple models. And I have another definitions for 2 other models for the 2 new years. OK. Import models. And here I just use the models. I run the file again. So now we have 2 other models that are created in AEM. Next, I will use the CLI to kind of query like what models we have, as well as getting the metadata. So I will switch to the terminal, and I will use the AIO CLI plugin, which support like different plugins. And here I use the headless plugin to do it. I will do headless model list, which will list all the model in AEM that I have. And apart from there are some test models, we also have the 3 new models that are there. Let me make it a bit smaller so that, OK. And in order to, let's say you want to query like what is inside the model, you can just copy the ID. And instead of list, you can just like get the model for the model ID. This one, maybe it has some error. Let me get another one. And with list like all the metadata as well as the fields that model have. You can of course like add tags to a model. So let's say you want to add this model as adaptTo 2023. So inside of model get, now we have tag list just to quickly check if it has, OK, so now this guy has 1 tag, which is adaptTo test. Let me put another tag for tag add adaptTo 2023. Oh, sorry, it's a wrong. I should use the colon instead of the slash. And now, yeah, now the model has 2 tags. And that allows you to, for example, set a policy for your DAM folder in order to create new fragments for your model. All right, so now that we have the model there, let's create some content fragments. Let me go back to the code. And for the content fragments, I go back to the demo here. So instead of creating content fragment models, now I will use the create fragments. So the SDK support like auto suggesting, so you can use, first of all, I will call the new model, and then I just get the first model, sorry, the new fragment that I've created. I clean the terminal. I run the app again. So now that we have the first model, the first fragment, you can go back to the CLI and get what fragments there. So we have a bunch of fragments here, but basically the first one, the latest one that we just created is on top. And then you can, of course, like see what is inside the fragment as well. How about if you have like a bunch of fragments that you have created in Excel? So I guess it's a bit too small. Okay. Anyway, so we created like a few content fragments in Excel, and then we want to like bulk import that to content fragments. How would we do it? I have a bulk import file that basically read the CSV file that we see in Excel, and then save the content fragments into AEM using the CLI, the SDK library that we just used. So just quickly run this file, bulk import, and then we have like the new content fragments created. We can of course check it using the CLI. I think, yeah. So we run the fragment list again, and now we can see like all the new sections are created in AEM. So now that we have all those content there, Dragan will show you how to consume that in the client app.
Thank you. Okay, so these two tools are somehow complementary because you can automate everything with admin tools creating and with SDK pulling that data. GraphQL can be complex, but in the case with content fragments, you can just retrieve the data. So if you want any mutation, if you want to create a content, you actually need to use the admin tools which were presented earlier. And as I mentioned at the beginning, with short list, what actually we can do with content fragment, we have several types. Several ways how to retrieve the content. One is through persistent query, which is regular GET request, which we save with the query which we saved earlier. And here with these top tabs, day 1, day 2, and day 3, I use the data which I retrieved through cached query, or as you can see, the response is the same. Except of post request, here we have a regular GET request. So this is not per se GraphQL, but it will help you if you know that you have some structure which is always the same when you visit some page, usually some static list, then you really don't need to use GraphQL for that. You should cache it, and you should use persistent query. In persistent query, you can also use variables and pass it on the URL. Next type, again, let's say the most simple one is how to retrieve an item, just one model item. Here, I'm using retrieval by path, and you can see in the call below, we have my model is called session, and I'm just using session by path inside the query, where I can receive just one item in this structure. So the structure is always the same. Data, then model name, the type, in this case, by path. If it's by path, then it's just one item. If it's a list, then it's going to be items. Like here, I'm using filter in day 1, and with that filter, I'm just using list type. As you can see, the response is, again, data, model name, type, in this case, list, and items, and the content items which we need. In the payload, you can see how the query is structured. I have some variables, and I have sessions list because my model is named session. With variables, you can pass, in this case, I pass it to create a filter, so I can filter only content which is in this date. The final one and the most complex way to retrieve the query is using paginated query. Like here, when you visit a page, I have one group of results which I can then load more, and when I reach end, I will disable my button. With this, I used paginated query, and you can see here, for example, that in payload, the query is using sessions paginated with a lot of different information inside, like page info, starting cursor, ending cursor, because by default, it's a cursor-based paginated. You can also use offset-based if you like. All these types of queries are giving different results. Previously, we saw list, then by path. Here we see paginated session, where the most complexity coming through how to retrieve these items, because we need to create some function which is going to check if it's a list or paginated, and then either go through list items or again go through node and retrieve again node data. In order to simplify this, that's why we created the SDK. And in the code, I can quickly show you. Sorry, wrong code. I can quickly show you how those method works. Let's start with a simple one, like getting just one item. You can create a query for one item. It's quite simple. You just need to know that it's model name, then by path, it's a type. But you can also build the query. Building the query can be done just providing a name and the fields per one item which you want to retrieve. So regardless if it's a list, by path, or paginated, you can simplify building that query just providing some config object which is going to have name of the model and fields which are for that item, one item which you want to retrieve. And then using different methods via SDK, you can build the query and run it. You don't need to care if it's a paginated or list or path. How the query works, it depends on the arguments which you provide. So if you provide a path, we are going to filter that out. We are going to figure out, OK, you want item by path. If you provide some paginated arguments, then we are going to run paginated query. For paginated query, the only difference is that you need to initialize that query at the beginning. So you can see here that I'm actually creating paginated query, which is not going to create any request. It's just going to store information about page size and other attributes which you provide. And then either on page load, you can retrieve first results, and then on the click of the load more, you can retrieve next results. Retrieving next results with paginated query is, again, simplified. In the end, you can see how that looks like. It's just using paginated cursor, which you created earlier, and then just calling next without any additional data, because configuration for pagination is already created, like you have 8 items, 5 items, or whatever you want at the beginning, and then just calling next, which means on click of a button, load more, you just need to call this function, and the next results will be loaded. Hopefully, this SDK will simplify how can you work with GraphQL inside AEM, because it's already predefined. You have 3 types, so there is no need to write down your own fetch function for something which is already known up front. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dragan. Yeah, so I guess we have 1 minute. So those are the key learnings of our toolings that we've seen. So first of all, easy to use, so that developer can get started in no time. Second, flexibility. How to use mainstream front-end frameworks and tools, no expertise required. And finally, extensibility, so that you can extend AEM Headless. That's all from us. Those are the references. And yeah, we are open to any questions.
Thank you. I really like that you took like the adaptTo website for your example. Also got some question, and Robert would like to know, does the API tool support working with CF variations?
You mean, well, so yes, it does support both the REST and the GraphQL API.
Then Henry would like to know, are you planning to go a bit further with the API and support, for example, managing, manipulating assets or other type of content as well?
I'm not aware of that. I'm not sure if, well, I mean, we have the headless panel discussion later. You can ask that question so that my colleagues can probably give a better answer than me.
That makes sense. Are these simplified APIs exposed in the Java runtime as well?
Well, which API? Can you repeat that?
The simplified APIs. I don't have any more details here, so
I assume in the CLI which you're using, because from my side it was just JavaScript client side. We have Java client for that also, but not sure if you're asking about the same SDK. Yeah, it exists as a JavaScript, Node.js version, and Java version.
Yeah.
Is there a multilingual translation support?
Also, well, so the good thing with API is that you can have control over your app flow, and then from that you can create like the use case, including MSM, right? So, yeah.
Okay, it's a good one. How does integration with dynamic media work?
Well, so at least for the assets, you can already get like the URL of the optimized assets directly from AEM. I'm not familiar with dynamic media, so I'm not sure if there's a way to kind of streamline that. But yeah, maybe also another question later in the panel.
Excellent. Duy, Dragan, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.